Hey guys, greetings from the Golan Heights here in northern Israel. I wanted to take a few minutes and share with you and unpack one of our core visions, passions, mandates, objectives as an organization and spiritual family. First of all, I want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of you who have recently either subscribed to the YouTube channel or downloaded either the FAI app or the FAI Studios app that just launched a week ago with the release of our new film, Days of Noah. Thank you guys for subscribing. Thank you guys for downloading the app, for sharing it. It's growing faster than we anticipated, and for that we're very, very grateful. Because of that, I wanted to take a few minutes and unpack one of our core visions and one of our core mandates as an organization so that you understand a little bit more about us if you're just getting to know us now for the first time. We started FAI in 2011 in the wake of the Arab Spring, the outbreak of the Syrian civil war. We focused all of our attention on the Middle East, and for the last 12 years or so we've been giving everything we've got to the 1040 window and to the Middle East. When we started the organization, the Lord used the story and the life of Hudson Taylor and the China Inland Mission as a framework for understanding how we would pioneer this organization in the different framework and objectives and what the long-term goals of it were. And we have three primary objectives, or you could just say dimensions or dynamics of our core mandate. One is the international component, two is the regional component, and three is the local component. But the funnel, everything, the tip of the spear really is the local, meaning in the end our passion is to put people on the ground in the 1040 window, specifically in the Muslim world, but not only in the Muslim world. We wanted to make this our priority, but not our sole passion. So locally was to engage, was to put salt and light, warm bodies on the ground in harvest fields around the Middle East, specifically the Muslim world, specifically conflict zones, specifically the places that organizations are least likely to engage. And so we prioritized those over the last 12 years. We've made a number of documentaries and films about this. You can go watch them. I'd encourage you to start with The Frontier, Better Friends in the Mountains, Sheep Among Wolves, Covenant and Controversy. These documentary series really unpack the big picture for us and how these things go together. Specifically the film The Frontier unpacks this. So the local is the tip of the spear. Now behind the tip of the spear, the shaft of the spear, so to speak, is the regional component, which is training and mobilization. So locally, it's engaging on the ground in these countries. Regionally, it's mobilization, it's recruitment, it's training, it's getting people on the field, getting the right people on the field, and getting them in the right places with the right tools in their hands. That's the regional piece. The international piece is recruitment and advocacy. A big part of this is messaging. A big part of this is proclamation, articulating the vision, articulating the call. Now, the parallel with Hudson Taylor, there's so many of them, but one of them is this issue of advocacy. Now, Hudson Taylor crossed the ocean about 13 times by boat during the years that he was laboring and birthing the China Inland Mission. He would split his time between locally being on the ground in every province in China. Regionally, they were mobilizing people into China. And then internationally, they were recruiting and advocating for people to go specifically to China. And the Lord instructed us saying that, Syria, the 1040 window, the Muslim world was our proverbial China. Now, what happened in the days of Hudson Taylor was the use of the printing press. He was traveling and speaking all over the world and calling people to engage, and thousands of people engaged into every province in China. But the printing press, the actual printed word, was something that they utilized. And one of the strategic scaffolding in our minds at the beginning was specifically the use of film and media, meaning we live in a very visual generation. Our generation reads, yes, but realistically, the main mode of communication to this hour of history is not written text, it is actually visual media. So at the very beginning, we prioritized the establishment of FAI Studios and the use of film, documentary film specifically at the beginning, but we had a long-term goal of eventually getting into narrative work. And here at the 10, 11, 12-year mark of the organization, we've made that pivot. Now we're going to continue making all the documentary films. They got hung up during the COVID years, and we had to put them on the back burner, but we're by no means done with these films. We have Covenant Controversy 4 and 5 coming out. We have Sheep Among Wolves 3 in the pipeline, Better Friends Than Mountains 3, The Frontier 2. We have a lot of films in the pipeline of the documentary kind. But we also have a burden and a passion to make narrative work that puts the message on display for a different audience and in a different way. And that's what I want to unpack in this session, just briefly, but I want to give you an understanding, because we've had some people ask over the last week, why did you launch a new app, a Studios app? And why the shift to feature films? You know, we've had a lot of graciously angry people saying, hey, you know, Days of No is cool or not cool, whatever, but where's the documentaries? Why aren't you guys doing that anymore? And so I wanted to unpack that and give some vision for you, because I want to invite you into this, both invite you into our logic and our burden and our passion for it, but also to understand the strategic value of it and the nature and what we're aiming for. Now, we launched the FAI app. I remember being in Cairo, Egypt with Joel Richardson in 2013. Him and I had a conversation about launching basically what became as the FAI Studios ecosystem, and the app and the films and journalism and writing and publishing and music and all these things to get the message out as widely as possible and use the arts as diversely as possible to communicate it. And here we are 10 years later from that conversation in Cairo, and we're now at, I think, the beginning phase of the next 10, 11, 12 years of really focusing on a different part of our mandate in that, and that's narrative work and building out FAI Studios as a film production house that's developing feature films and narrative films and episodic series to put the Maranatha message on blast. So the question that we've been asked a lot recently is, why did you start a new app? You guys already have the one app. We love it. It's great. Why start a new app? And what's the deal with the feature films? Are you guys, you know, is priorities changing? What's the deal? No, the priorities are not changing. This has been a part of our vision from the very, very beginning. And now we're beginning to step into things that we thought would be further down the pipeline, but we're actually doing it now, and we're grateful for that it happened sooner than we thought. And COVID really helped that. I won't get into that now, but it was a catalyst for us feeling like, you know what, I think it's time. I think it's time for us to engage in these things that we thought we'd engage later in. So with that said, I want to talk about the international leg of our mandates, local, regional, international. The international leg has two priorities. And I love the way Jeff Henderson, our director, articulates it. He says, we want to reach those we want to encourage those who've been reached, build them up in an Ephesians 4 way, building up the body, those who have heard, and we want to proclaim the message to those who have not heard. There's an international component to that that's not local, meaning when I'm living on the ground wherever I'm living, when our teams and leaders are on the ground locally, there's a local dynamic with our communities and neighbors and the people that we're there to serve. But there's also an international element of messaging that's very, very critical. One is resourcing those who have the gospel, and one is resourcing those who don't and who have never heard. And that requires a different kind of messaging mechanism and a different platform, I think. Many of you who've tracked with us for a long time have tracked with us a long time because you agree with us on many of these things. Either maybe you didn't at the beginning, maybe you do now, maybe you're in between, but either way, you resonate with Sheep Among Wolves. You resonate with Covenant and Controversy, The Frontier. You resonate with our core mandates on the ground in the Middle East as you've come to know them over the years. Now, the film piece is very precious to us for a number of reasons. And it's killing multiple birds with one stone by doing this. And this is what I want to unpack for you so that you see it and you feel it and you understand the logic of it, so that, number one, you can pray for us. Number two, so that you can financially support this thing. And number three, that you could get involved in collaborative ways. I think there's a lot of people in the nations who carry the same burden and passion for arts and film and messaging in the same way. And maybe we would collaborate together in the days and the years ahead. We need good people who carry the vision and values of these things. Not just good cameramen or good sound guys or good actors or good musicians, but people who carry the core DNA and ethos of the Hudson Taylor framework. Now, the thing that I'm so gripped by and so committed to in developing the studios over the next 10, 20 years is building out a new platform to engage people that are never going to go to the FAI app as it is now and watch the teachings, read the books, listen to the music, be a part of the training programs, watch the documentaries. It's just not where they're at. One, because maybe they don't love the Lord at all, and maybe two, they do, but it's kind of in a not a white hot, passionate, sold out, dedicated way, like many of the people who are tracking with this. Meaning, Sheep Among Wolves, for example, is a radical film with a radical message with radical implications. And I don't use that word frivolously. I mean, it's very radical. It's calling you to give everything you've got for this thing. Now, the percentage of people in the world who are down for that kind of radicalism, if I could put it that way, is a very small percentage of people. And we feel our mandate as an organization is to encourage that group and to edify them and to bless them and to share fellowship with them, with many of you. But we also have a passion for the people who say either, I don't love the Lord and I don't know the story, I don't know the Maranatha message, or I love the Lord but I love it in kind of a cultural, I go to church on Sundays kind of a way, meaning you're not, super committed to this thing. And I believe that story has the ability to be catalytic in people's lives. And that's why we're building out this new framework for film production and narrative work and episodic series. I think of it this way. It's the guy that, maybe goes to church begrudgingly with his wife and hears the boring message and is judging everything around him and is uncomfortable, doesn't want to be there, goes home and binge watches 4 episodes of Game of Thrones and then watches some other show on Netflix. He's hungry for entertainment. He's hungry for good story, good writing, good acting, something to take him out of his existence and his world that is so numb, so dead, so unenjoyable. I'm thinking of that guy when I'm writing and making the screenplays for the films and the episodic series that we have coming down the pipeline. Now, that doesn't mean that Sheep Among Wolves 2, 3, 4, 5 are not important to me. Oh man, they're important to me. We're committed to those. But we're also committed to that guy. We're also committed to the guy that says, I don't like these stories at all. I know them and I don't like them. I go, do you know them? Our passion is to tell these stories in ways that's going to break the familiarity. Now, this was a key motivating factor in the way that we developed the screenplay and the script for Days of Noah, which, if you haven't seen it yet, please go watch it. And if you've only watched part of it, please watch the whole thing before you make any judgments about it, because this is a film that's very calculated with precision and intentionality to accomplish something by the end of it. This is not your traditional Sunday school biography, biopic on Noah building a boat. This is something else. It's a higher concept film. I won't give it away, but there's a big twist and a subversion to the plot that's very significant. These are the kind of stories that we want to tell moving forward. But this is not necessarily for the crowd that loves the frontier, that's tracking with the Maranatha Global Bible Studies. Now, we love that crowd, that we are that crowd. We are those people. This is something that we're very passionate about. But we're also passionate about expanding the reach of the Maranatha message into corners of the globe and into hearts that are not going to resonate with the normal kind of stuff that we put out on the FAI app. That's why we developed the FAI Studios app, and why the Studios is going to become a key part of the FAI ecosystem moving forward, which is messaging specifically and predominantly to those who have never heard or who have heard but either don't like it or think they don't like it. They really have just never heard it the way it is. They've heard some cheap Sunday school knockoff, or they've heard some cultural representation of it that doesn't actually get to the heart of it. I'm going to share more on this later in days ahead, but we're in the middle right now of production of a pilot series called Lion of Judah. Lion of Judah is a passion project of mine. I am so excited about this. I'll give information, more details about this in the days ahead. But this is very much geared towards aiming at the Netflix, TikTok generation that is starving for good films, starving for good writing, good acting, good entertainment, to get sucked into something. We're writing this specifically for that crowd. Now, I know the Sheep Among Wolves crowd is going to love this. They may not like Days of Noah so much, but they're going to love Lion of Judah. It's a very, very beautiful series that's going to run for many, many years. It's going to be our flagship episodic series, and I'm very excited to share more with you about that. in the days ahead. But what I want you to connect with now, and I'm speaking specifically to, let's say, the FAI family globally, who's been tracking with us and who loves everything, I want to encourage you to take this burden on with us, both in prayer and financial support, because it takes a lot to do this financially. And we have an amazing team of producers who've been funding these projects, and we're going to continue funding these projects because they really want to impact, and they want to influence, and they want to message to that massive demographic, and not just the small demographic that tracks with FAI. Now, I'm just blown away by the millions of people who have watched our films and who engage with the Bible studies. It's just crazy seeing the statistics. I'm like, wow, this is like way more prolific than we anticipated. And it's a very beautiful thing. We're very grateful for that. Having said that, it's a drop in the bucket. You know, there's billions of people on this spinning rock called Earth. There's billions of people. So it's really not that impressive that a few million are committed to this. We want to expand that at a much bigger level. And I think in order to do that, we need to do creative, out-of-the-box media and film production that's going to engage people, grab them by the throat, and pull them into the story through beauty and the power of these incredible stories, the greatest stories ever told. So on one hand, that is a goal. The other goal is this, and this is where it serves the local component in a massive way. I'll give you an example. We were working in Syria a number of years ago with the Israeli Defense Force during Operation Good Neighbor. It was a very, very expensive project because it was in the middle of heavy, heavy wartime. We were engaged in medical ministry on the ground in the midst of traumatic war injuries, and it was a big budget project. And I spent most of my time trying to raise funds for this because our teams were constantly on the phone calling saying, we're out of this, we're out of that, we need this, we're out of this, we need this. And I was struggling to keep up with the fundraising, and it was so discouraging. And we traversed the earth trying to raise funds for this beautiful project that we had, that I so believed in. And if I'm honest, it was very discouraging because I'm thinking it's Israel, it's Syria, this is a crazy, unique project. Like, we should be throwing our money and our bodies at this thing. And yet it was very slow moving. And, you know, we'd do an update video about Syria, and my mom would share it on Facebook. And then I'd be looking at it, scratching my head going, man, like 300 people watched that video. That's discouraging. And then I'm watching some kid on TikTok who's got, 1 billion followers, who's, doing his little TikTok thing, or these YouTube gamers, I'm going, how do we, what? Because this is a beautiful project. This is stunning. This should be something that should be put on blast. And yet, right now, my mom's sharing it on Facebook, which I'm grateful for. Thanks, Mom. But it's not adequate. And so there's a part where we need to strategically build a platform that broadens the audience to connect more people to that. Because just on a statistical level, if only 300 people know about Operation Good Neighbor in Syria, only a percentage of that 300 people are going to potentially give financially, pray, or collaborate and get involved on the ground in some meaningful way. That's a very small percentage of people. Now, I'm very proud in the Lord of what we did during that with the limited people that we had and the limited resources that we had. But looking ahead to the next kind of project like that, I want to send that out to 3 million people, not just 300 people. And so the app is really designed, in our mind, to broaden the audience, so to speak. Meaning, let's take Sheep Among Wolves. Millions of people have watched that film. It's gone around the world, and it's broadened the audience massively of those of people who are going to connect with the core vision and DNA, so that when we put out an appeal to either give financially, to pray, or to get involved, there's going to be a lot more people now getting involved. It's amazing to watch the hundreds and thousands of people that are either subscribing new every day or downloading the apps every day. It's amazing. But those numbers, and it's not because I'm greedy for statistics and numbers and we want a big audience. I am greedy for the Great Commission. I'm greedy for the 1040 window. I want to see all of our strategic resources, all of our intercession, all of our energy, all of our toil, all of our best strength and resources and people pouring into the places of priority where the Lord has commanded us to prioritize in Matthew 28 in the Great Commission, in Matthew 24:14. So for us, it's an issue of we want to grow the platform because we want to get more people involved in a meaningful way. And one of the ways we do that is through the documentaries. Some of the ways we do that is through messaging, through Bible teachings, the Maranatha Gold Bible Study, through music, through experimental films like Ballads of the Exodus. There's many ways we do that, but now we're shifting into developing the studios at a much broader level. Think of something like The Chosen. Some of you have watched The Chosen. Some of you, tons of you have watched The Chosen. Millions of people, billions of stats, I should say, have engaged with this show, The Chosen, that was not a documentary. Now, if you made a documentary about the life of Jesus, you're going to have a significantly smaller amount of people involved in it. But because it's big budget, it's well done, and it's sticking close to the integrity of the story of presenting Jesus as this incredibly attractive individual and taking him outside of the religious framework and taking him outside of a documentary Sunday school theological framework and putting him in a cinematic form, it's millions of people are engaging it. Now, I think of it like this. Now imagine if you had the reach, the global reach of The Chosen, but you also had that tethered to a frontline ministry in the 1040 window that could take that audience and push them into something meaningful. And that's not anything against the producers of The Chosen. I'm so grateful for those guys. I think it's an incredible film, an incredible project. For us, our burden and our passion is not to make films. I love making films, but that's not really the goal. The goal of making the films is to spread the message, number one, and then number two, to broaden the audience of potential collaborators in this Great Commission that we have in the 1040 window. That's the ambition. That's the reason why we're doing this, because if we can go from 300 to 3 million, it's significantly, it's crazy the impact and how it changes what we can do on the field, on the ground. I'll give you an example. We launched the app a couple years ago, and we went from having, I don't know, I think like 10,000 YouTube subscribers or something like that in an email list. So anytime I don't know how many people on Facebook who were tracking with us and supporting it, FAI with their likes and shares, it was like, 5, 6, 7,000 people. That's a drop in the bucket. And yet we're engaged in this massive task, and yet we have the ears of, a couple hundred people. And we're sitting there scratching our heads going, man, how do we need to broaden this. And so the development of the app and a number of other strategic things that we did, and bathing it in prayer and smart people coming around and helping to push it forward, it grew exponentially. And I remember a couple years ago, one of the Gaza wars broke out. And one of the things that we did was we brought families from the border communities around Gaza, brought them up to the north. This was during COVID when everything was shut down, so the hotels were empty, and they were going broke and going bankrupt, and so they needed money, and the people living on the borders needed to get out of Gaza area. So we said, let's bring them up and finance it so that they can get away, bring their families away from the war, and can be safe, and they can be up here with us in the north, and we can hang out and have a great time and fellowship with them and interact with them and get to know them and bless them. And at the same time, it can bless the economy in the north by bringing people up to the hotels. Let's just put it out on the app and put it out and see what happens. And within about a week, $250,000 came in. And we were able to pack out every single hotel in the north of Israel with families from Gaza. Now, I tell that story to say this: if it wasn't for the growth of the platform that came through the app, and which came largely through film, the films are actually what brought the most amount of people to the apps in terms of statistics. And so the film production for us, we're going, man, film is a really powerful mechanism both to message the message, to exalt the message to those who've heard it or they haven't heard it, but it's an incredible way to broaden and grow the foundation, the base of people that are tracking with us, so that when something like that happens, we can say, hey guys, and within a week, we can raise $250,000. Now, what would have happened if we had 10 times that size of an audience? We could have brought in significantly more financial resources and blessed significantly more people and had significantly more impact in the south and in the north of Israel during wartime. It's a and now we have budding relationships, growing relationships with all of those communities. We now know them, they're friends of ours. It's been an amazing experience, but it was all made possible because the platform grew and we were able to message through that platform. And so for those of you who are wondering, what's the deal with the studios? That's the deal with the studios. On one hand, we're wanting to exalt the Maranatha message as high and as loud and as broad as we can. And on the other hand, we're also wanting to grow the base so that we have more people tracking with us, so that more people are praying, more people are financially giving, and more people are collaborating and getting involved in a meaningful way. So this is what I want to ask you in closing in this, is to lay hold of this burden that we're carrying and carry this burden with us for the next 10 years. Ways you can do that. Number one, I want to ask you to pray for the studios. Pray for this as a core pillar in the house of FAI. I mean, what we're trying to do globally, internationally, regionally, locally, this is a core pillar and a core mechanism in the whole thing. I want to ask you to pray for it. Secondly, I want to ask you to financially support it at a monthly level. Now, we started a $5 giving campaign a year or so ago, and it's absolutely changed, revolutionized our field work, because now we have a steady monthly income and we're not having to go out and pound the streets and go raise support consistently. As soon as we raise it, it just goes out again. We have to go do it all over again. Now, the $5 a month giving is growing and growing and growing, and it's just absolutely, it's blown our minds of how impactful it is on the field and taking the pressure off of us to actually focus on the work, not on the fundraising. Now, I want to ask you to consider supporting specifically FAI Studios. Why specifically the studios? Because all of the non-designated funds that come into FAI through $5 giving or whatever, non-designated funds, specifically goes to the field. It doesn't go to media and film. That's funded separately, specifically through the producer's circle. What I want to ask you guys to do is consider financially supporting the studios either at $5 a month or at $1 a day. These are the two appeals. I want to ask you to consider donating either $5 a month, which anybody can do, or $1 a day, which is $29 a month. This is going into the pool monthly, which enables us to grow the studio, which enables us to grow the platform, which enables us to grow the resources in terms of people, resources, finances, strategic thought, intercession, prayer. All of these things swell and grow when the platform grows. So sowing into the studio at an international level actually ends up on the field in the Middle East. It's an amazing thing. And the last thing is to get involved with us in the studios if you have a skill set and you want to be involved in this. I know many of you carry a burden for this. I want to invite you to get a hold of us. We want to stay lean. We want to stay very economical. We're not interested in building this big bloated system. We want to keep it lean and economical so that we can do incredibly well done films and series, but at a very low overhead. So because of that, we're not looking for a lot of people, we're looking for the right people. So consider praying for us, please. Consider financially giving towards this at a monthly level. And as well, consider getting involved. Guys, thanks for watching this. Until next time, Maranatha.